All right, so let's talk a little bit about gender stereotypes. And so our gender stereotypes are understanding kind of what is, what do boys do and what do girls do, can begin around about age 18 months. So by 18 months, most kids know if they're a boy or a girl, at least what their brain is telling them. Is their brain telling them they're a boy, or is their brain telling them they're a girl? So these gender stereotypes as of, this is what girls do, this is what boys do, this is a girl color, this is a boy color, this is a girl toy, this is a boy toy, right? Those types of things. They tend to strengthen and become rigid through early childhood, right? So they are very big on putting things into, specific categories, right? They're going to divide toys, clothing, tools, jobs, games, emotions, everything by gender. And they're going to make judgments kind of based on gender stereotyping. But also this has to do with their cognitive limitations, right? Because their brain really can't understand gray areas right now. And they're making schemas, right? So when they see mommy doing something, they're going to say, oh, this is a mommy thing. Mommy is a girl. This must be a girl thing. They see daddy doing something. Okay, daddy's doing this. Daddy's a boy. This must be a thing that boys do. I'm a boy. I should do those things, right? Remember what, Freud said, which, I don't ever say that very often, but at this age, what are we doing? We're identifying with our same-sex parent. Are we doing it because we're in love with our opposite-sex parent? No, that's gross. We're doing it because by 3, we've really started to understand the fact that we're boys or we're girls, and we're trying to figure out what that means. And because at this age, everything is black and white, it's very much, it's this or that, then I'm going to do the things that boys do because I'm a boy. I'm going to look at boys, see what boys do, and I'm going to say, this is a boy thing. Now, the more rigid the parents are on this, the more kind of hardcore the gender stereotypes are going to be. So things that kind of influence our understanding of gender, gender stereotyping, gender typing, different things that we see. Part of it's genetic, right? It's kind of an evolutionary adaptiveness to understand what we're good at. And, just hormones in general. Girls have more estrogens and boys have more androgens. But almost all of it has to do with environment, right? Environment tells us what genders are supposed to do. Your family, right? Your family is going to kind of teach you. If you only see mom cooking, then you're going to think cooking is just a woman's thing. If you only ever see dad mowing the lawn, then you're going to think mowing the lawn is just a male thing. Teachers influence this as well. Now, it's not going to do it as much at this age, especially if we're not in school, but as we get older, right, and we still see even today that teachers do still tend to call on boys more for math and girls more for, like, English. What do your peers say, right? If your peers tell you things like boys shouldn't do this or girls shouldn't do this, that's going to have an impact on us. Right? Our broader social environment, where do we live, right? Different societies have different rules about what men do and what women do. And that's going to influence how we understand maleness and femaleness. And then also the media, right? What is the media telling us about boys and girls? And this can influence us a lot as well, right? Especially when it comes to what do we see men and women doing on TV. So especially when it comes to like sports, right? Most sports that are on TV are male sports. So if you're a little girl who likes sports, you may not be seeing yourself represented on TV. You may not think that playing sports professionally is something that you can do because you don't ever see it very often, right? If I say, name 10, female athletes, most people can't do that. But if I say name 10 male athletes, people can usually do that no problem, right? Because that's what we're presented with. Right? So as we're presented with these things, we start to kind of separate them into boxes. And again, especially at this age, we start to separate it into boxes. Now, family can absolutely have an impact on this and change this, right? I've always told my kids there's no such thing as boy toy and girl toys. There's no such thing as a boy color or a girl color. It's a color. It's a toy. Who cares what it is? And I've had a lot of pushback on that from, different people in my family and in society. And I say, I don't care. Deal with it. I still do, because I think they still do it. Sometimes not. But McDonald's used to say, do you want a girl toy or a boy toy with the Happy Meal, which would drive me crazy. And I would just have my daughter ask, like, what are the toys? And then she would pick the one she wanted more of. And we were at McDonald's one day, and the girl toy, quote unquote, was a little Barbie. And the boy toy, I think, was a car. And my daughter had chosen the Barbie because she actually did just want the Barbie. And we were sitting at McDonald's in like the little play area, and there was a little boy next door with his family, and she went over to talk to him because she's a little Miss Social Butterfly. And, you know, he was zooming his little car around. She's like, oh, can I play with your toy? And he said, okay. And she said, well, you can play with my Barbie. And the dad said, no son of mine's going to play with a Barbie. He's like, Barbies are for girls. And my daughter, I think, was 4 or 5 at the time, because my son wasn't born yet. And she put her hands on her hips, and she looked right at that grown-ass man and said, there are no such things as toys for boys or toys for girls. Toys are just toys, and they're for everybody. And it was one of my proudest mom moments, although I was kind of worried that the dad was going to, I don't know, report me or something. But, you know, like I've taught them early, like there isn't, right? It's a toy, it's a color, it's whatever. And that and they get pushback from that all the time. My son's favorite color is purple, and he has been told at school that purple is a color for girls, not for boys. And, you know, he has to kind of stand up for himself and say, no, I like the color purple, like, deal with it. So it's how we're taught on what we think is something males do and females do. So in order to reduce this, we kind of want to not expose them to a whole bunch of gender stereotyping type stuff. We want to limit traditional family gendered roles, right? Have dad cook dinner sometimes. Have mom, you know, go and mow the lawn, which I did the other day with a manual lawnmower. I thought I was going to die. Provide non-traditional models, right? Show them men who are nurses and secretaries. Show them women that are firefighters and police officers, so they see that anyone can pretty much do anything. And just encourage those flexible beliefs. Make it so that they're not always thinking that it has to be this or that, black and white. Right? They can understand gray areas earlier in life if they're taught gray areas earlier in life. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is child-varying styles. Gender-varying styles. This is what you're going to be writing your discussion question on this week. All right, so we have 4 types of child-varying styles that are classified based on if they have high or low demand and control over the kids, or high or low warmth and communication. So you can be, you know, we're going to think about it as a square where we have high demand and control, low demand and control, high warmth and communication, low warmth and communication. So our first one is authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting has high demand and control and also high warmth and communication. So it's a high. Authoritative parents make sure that there's, you know, strict rules for their kids. They enforce those rules. They know what's going on with their kid. But they also show a lot of warmth, and they make sure that they talk with their kids. They explain things to their kids, especially rules and things like that. That's an authoritative parent. An authoritarian parent is high on demand and control, but low on warmth and communication. So it's high-low. They have a lot of demand and control. They have rules. They have, you know, you get in trouble if you get rid of the rules. I know where my kid is doing all the time. But there's not a lot of warmth and communication in the home. So I don't, you know, tell you I love you. I don't give you a lot of hugs. I don't really talk to you about why you're in trouble. You just are in trouble. The end. That's authoritarian. Permissive parents are low on demand and control and high on warmth and communication. So they don't have a whole lot of rules. They don't kind of demand a lot from their kids. They don't usually know what their kids are doing. But they do show warmth and communication. So they talk to their kids and things like that. Permissive parents are kind of like those parents who want to be their kid's best friend. But, you know, your parent shouldn't be your best friend when you're a kid, right? Like your best friend should be someone your own age. Yes, I talk to you, you know, it's kind of like, I'm not a real mom, a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. That doesn't usually lead to great child behavior. We have our uninvolved parents who are low on demand and control, low on warmth and communication. They don't have rules for their kids, they don't follow through, they don't show warmth, they don't talk to their kids, they're just pretty much uninvolved in taking care of their children, right? They're there, they're in their children's lives, but they're not really helping to raise them in any real way. So most studies show that authoritative parenting is the most effective and best parenting, but a lot of those studies were done on white families. When we look at multicultural studies, we find that authoritative parenting can work best in some cultures, and authoritarian works best in other cultures and other backgrounds, which kind of has to do with what the culture kind of says, right? What the cultural things are. So we see more authoritarian families in African American families and Asian families, and more authoritative in white families and Latino families. Really what it comes down to is, are you making sure that your kids kind of aren't getting in trouble, like know how to take care of themselves, things like that. Also, some kids respond more to authoritative parenting and some kids respond more to authoritarian parenting. So you may have one kid that you're more authoritative with and more that you have to be more authoritarian with, which is always fun because kids aren't liking that too much. Permissive and uninvolved are never good parenting styles. They never work out well. Our permissive kids tend to actually be, you would think they might be more autonomous, but they actually tend to be much more clingy to their parents because they haven't really been given any guidelines. They haven't been given any structure. So they really don't know how to live life correctly. They also tend to not do very well in school. Our uninvolved kids are going to be much more likely to not be doing well in school, be more likely to be involved in drugs and illegal behavior and things like that, because again, my parents aren't teaching me how to be good human beings. So an example, the different child rearing styles. Let's say you have a 14-year-old daughter who is in 7th grade, and she comes and she says, "Hey mom, my friend Julie is having a sleepover, and her parents aren't going to be there, and it's also going to be co-ed, so boys are going to be there too. So it's an overnight sleepover with boys and no parents there. Can I go?" Authoritative parent would say, "No, you cannot go to that, and here's why. Right? I don't want you being anywhere overnight where there aren't parents around. I don't think you are ready to be, spending the night where there's boys there. It's not that I don't trust you, but I don't think that you are, emotionally prepared for this kind of situation, and I also don't want you to be without parental supervision." The end. Right? So I'm being a good parent and saying, "No, you're not going to this," but I'm explaining to you why. Right? Now, is the kid going to care about your explanation? No. They're going to say, "Oh, you're the worst parent ever. I hate you. Meh, run upstairs, slam the door," whatever. But in the long run, they understand, like, this is why, it's happening. An authoritarian parent, kid comes in, same scenario. "Can I go to the sleepover?" "Hell no." The end. Of course you're not going. I'm not going to explain to you why you're not going. You're just not going. That's just not happening. Period. A permissive parent would say, "Oh, of course you can go, because I'm a cool mom, and cool moms let their kids do whatever they want. Have fun, honey. Do you want me to buy you a new cute dress for the boys?" Not a good decision. That's very permissive parenting. An involved parent would be like, "I don't care. Do whatever you want." Right? I'm not going to bother to try and parent you in any way, shape, or form. All right, so those are our kind of 4 main parenting styles that we talk about in developmental research. All right, so child maltreatment is child physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and emotional abuse. We see a lot, if not most, child maltreatment happening before the age of 6. Physical abuse, obviously, when hurting your child physically. Sexual abuse, child being sexually abused. For girls, females have a 1 in 3 chance of being sexually abused before the age of 18. Boys have a 1 in 5 to 6 chance of being sexually abused before the age of 18. isn't talked about as much as it should be, but it is extremely common and is very harmful to the child, both physically and mentally. And neglect is when children are not getting their needs met, either their physical needs met, their educational needs met, their medical needs met. And emotional abuse is when you are abusive, but emotionally, right? Yelling at them, telling them they're no good, right? You were a mistake. I never should have had you, right? I wish I would have, had an abortion instead of having you. Like, things like that are emotional abuse that kids have. Now, there's a lot of kids that have all of these going on at home, right? They got a lot going on. As far as what we see in, like, coming into, like, CPS reports, we mostly remove kids for neglect, right? Parents can't feed them. Parents can't provide adequate shelter. Parents aren't taking them to get their medical needs met, aren't taking them to school, things like that. Physical abuse and sexual abuse. If a child's being sexually abused, they're also a lot of times being physically abused. And we usually don't know they're being sexually abused until they've come into the system. And we have a kind of like full physical done of them and find this out. And when there's neglect and sexual abuse and physical abuse, there's almost always emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is hard to do anything about, right? I can't take your kids away because of emotional abuse. There's nothing that we can do as social workers to, stop emotional abuse, on its own, if there's not other things kind of going on there. But it is, just as psychologically damaging, right? To be hearing things like that constantly. So a lot of our kids are being maltreated. They're more likely to be maltreated if they have any type of disability, mental disability, physical disability. Their likelihood of maltreatment increases significantly. So parent characteristics for child maltreatment. Parents who are not educated on how to be a parent, who have low parental education, parents who are substance abuse users, parents who have untreated mental illness are more likely to maltreat their children. Like I said, for the child's characteristics, children who are disabled in some way are much more likely to be maltreated. Older children are more likely to be physically abused. And a lot of that has to do with the oldest child a lot of times will step in and take a beating for their younger siblings. So they tend to have more of in a lot of families, they tend to have more of the physical abuse aimed towards them. Just family characteristics, if the parents come from a home that was abusive, they're more likely to be abusive as well. If they live in a community where abuse is not reported, or if abuse is not really frowned upon, is going to be more likely to. And culturally speaking, if you're in a culture where hitting and abusing your kids is considered the norm, then we're going to see children that have more child maltreatment occurring. All right, so consequences of this, emotional problems, obviously, problems at school, learning problems. It's really hard to focus at school when home life is, horrific. Likelihood of brain damage from all of these, right? Physical abuse, obviously, but also emotional abuse, neglect, all of it can actually cause physical brain damage. They're going to have troubles adjusting to being kind of like, quote unquote normal individuals. They're going to have more aggression. They're going to have more problems making friends and keeping friends. Then they're much more likely to use and abuse drugs and alcohol as they get older and to have delinquency issues. The way to prevent this is training for these high-risk parents, these young parents, these parents who've never parented before, these parents who, may live in, really stressful lives where they may be likely to take out their, stress on their kids. We want to have as much social support for families as possible. Make sure we check in on parents, especially the ones that are, more high risk. If we have support groups for them to go to, because parenting is hard. If we have a social worker assigned to them, right? Home visitation, just kind of checking in and saying, hey, are you using these, skills we've given you for taking care of your kids? We can't mandate a lot of this because of how our, society is set up, but in a lot of countries they actually do mandate a lot of this to make sure that kids are taken care of. All right, that's it for Chapter 8. Bye, y'all.